Welcome to the Fresh Start for Life podcast, the show that will help you get out of debt and start living the financial life of your dreams. Now, here's your host, Don Golden.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Fresh Start for Life podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today I had the opportunity to speak to my good friend and fellow bankruptcy attorney, Charles Laputka. During our interview, Charles tells his story about why he became a bankruptcy lawyer and why he enjoys it so much. And he also offers some really good tips on personal finance. And I'm really excited for you to hear what he has to say. So without further ado, let's jump to the interview. Hey, welcome to the show, Charles.
Hi, thanks, Don. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we've known each other a long time, but there's still a lot of things that I really feel like I don't know about you. So I want to jump right into that, and I want to start with a kind of a two-part question. And the question is this: when did you decide to become a lawyer? And then the second part of the question is, why did you actually decide to become a lawyer?
Oh, well, those are long questions. I'll try to give you the abbreviated version, but the short version is I spent some time in high school and college doing a lot of telemarketing and sales work in the banking industry. I began selling credit cards over the phone back in the 90s when people would give you their name, address, date of birth, and social security number right over the phone for a Providian Visa card. And I gave those to thousands of people when I was in high school. And then in college, I started working for Mellon Bank out in Pittsburgh. And I started to see the other side of that. I was on the repossession and collection side down in the basement of the bank, making calls and trying to get people to pay the bills they had defaulted on. So that was all while I was going through college. And then when I finished college, I was, trying to decide what to do next. There are some lawyers in my family, although my parents are not lawyers. My aunt, my uncle, and my grandfather were all attorneys. And it just seemed like something that I wanted to do. So I went to law school. And then when I graduated from law school, I started working for a consumer bankruptcy firm. And that was when I started to see the full circle here. So, I was first involved with selling the credit cards. Then I was involved with collecting the money. And then I started to learn how people have a resolution if they can't pay those debts. So that went on for a little bit. And then I went to work for a large law firm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I was the foreclosure attorney. And I was actually filing the foreclosure actions, selling people's homes, and it was miserable. I hated it every day. I was able to learn a lot. I learned a lot of the inside tips and tricks and everything from the banks, but I just hated what I was doing because I would get the phone calls on a Thursday night before the Friday morning sheriff's sale of, people crying, please don't sell my home. Please can't we work something out? And, my hands were really tied. I'm basically just a messenger for the bank. So at that point, I decided I needed to go back to the consumer bankruptcy side, having learned both. And I have been practicing as a consumer bankruptcy attorney with the Laputka Law Office since 2008. I've been an attorney since 2003, but in '08 is when I hung out my shingle. So at this point, we're about 14 years into private practice. And, I just love helping people every day. This law firm started with myself and my wife in a little apartment in downtown Allentown. And now we've grown to 12 to 14 employees, depending upon the month. And we're just helping hundreds and hundreds of consumers every year that are struggling with foreclosure or credit card debt. And now when I go home at night, I sleep well, I'm at peace, and I feel like I'm helping people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That sounds a lot like my start too, actually. Not all the background with the credit card industry and stuff, but I started my firm. It'll be 20 years in August. Pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
20 years in August. And I started it with just myself and a laptop. I didn't even have an office. I signed up my first client at a Cracker Barrel. So it's I just wrote an email to our staff yesterday, kind of telling the story because we're coming up on the 20th year, and not many people know the whole history of the firm. So I did a little email last night to the staff to let them know coming up on this anniversary, and giving them a little background information. So that's pretty cool that we both started from kind of small with I'm sure you didn't have a lot of advertising and stuff like that. You just had to grow it.
I had a wife and two kids and $5,000 in the bank, and that was that.
Yeah, same with me. I had a wife and one child and one on the way when I did it. So it was scary but exciting at the same time. I want to jump back just a little bit though. So when you went to law school though, did you picture yourself as being a consumer bankruptcy lawyer? Is that something you thought you'd do right out of law school, or did you kind of grow into that?
I kind of fell into it, and frankly, one of the reasons is because I went. So I was working for Mellon Bank in college, and when I went to go to law school at Duquesne University out in Pittsburgh, they told me that you can't have a job. Law school is difficult. You can't have a job. If you want to go to school here, you have to quit your job. So I quit my job for school. Now I'm super fortunate in that the way that I learn, opposite of most people, the way that I learned was exactly how they teach in law school. So law school actually came fairly easy to me. Not the bar exam, that's a different story, but the actual law school part came fairly easy to me. So at about 4 months in, I was broke because I had no job and I had some extra time. So I went to the 3L board at the school to see if I could pick up an internship. And I actually picked up this internship with a consumer bankruptcy firm that had stumbled into an arson trial. And he was looking for someone to do some research and help with this arson trial. So that is sort of how I fell into this. I was hired to handle the arson trial. After that was over and we had a successful, favorable outcome for our client, he said, hey, I like the way you work. Do you want to stick around and learn bankruptcy? So I did. And it just really opened my eyes. I just felt like I was helping people. And, the interesting thing is, in a lot of the law, you're hurting someone on the other side. So when you win, you're still going home knowing that you beat somebody or you hurt somebody. And rightfully or wrongfully with bankruptcy, I don't believe that discharging consumer debt to Visa, MasterCard, American Express, that those types of debts and eliminating those as bankruptcy is actually hurting. And the reason is because those are businesses. And you know this as well as I do, Don. I don't know how much our audience knows, but that's the reason there's interest, right? So if everybody paid their debts, banks and credit card companies could lend us money at 1.5% interest, and they would still be insanely wealthy. The fact that people don't pay their debts is what causes banks to lend money at a higher interest rate, because let's be real, banks don't lose. The banks never lose, right?
Right.
When a consumer,
even when they lose, they get bailed out.
Well, that's an entirely different story. But yes, I completely agree with you. But it's part of the business model, right? That's the risk, that's the reward of lending money. So when I walk away from a case where I have relieved a consumer, a husband and wife with 3 kids, and we've relieved them from $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 worth of unsecured debt, all at the quote expense of American Express, that doesn't bother me because it's just business to American Express, but it's personal to the people that we're helping.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So while we're on this subject, actually, this is a great segue into my next question. I would love it if you could share a story, from your past clientele, that kind of gives a good example of a consumer that you helped and how helped change their life really by taking them through the bankruptcy process. What did their life look like before and what did it look like after?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny because I have countless stories. And whenever I meet someone, having helped thousands and thousands of folks over my 19-year career at this point, whenever somebody doesn't know about bankruptcy at a party or at a restaurant or something, they always ask me, and I'm asked to come up with one of these stories. And, really, one of the biggest ones that comes right off the top of my head is literally a family that was going to lose the family farm. So we have out here in Eastern Pennsylvania, in the Allentown area, we are pretty urban. But just across the county line over in Berks County, we have a lot of family farmers that have owned farms for generations, hundreds of years. And this happened to be a particular dairy farm that was struggling because, the dairy conglomerates like Land O'Lakes and all of those big ones have really squeezed out the local farmer, just charging, paying less and less for their dairy milk. So it wasn't that there was a problem or that there was mismanagement, just a product that they sold for X amount of dollars for the last 100 years was now being purchased from them for less. So one of the things that I was able to do through a Chapter 12 bankruptcy, which is something that not a lot of bankruptcy attorneys even do because it's only for farmers and commercial fishermen.
I don't do them. I've never done one.
Well, I don't know that you're in the right area, but we do have them here.
We do. We have strawberry farmers.
Ah. So, the long story short is we were able to put them into a reorganization because the USDA loan, the bank had come calling for the payments on the farm because over the years it was paid off. 50, 60 years ago, it was paid off. But over the years, as the prices decreased and the balance sheet got a little out of whack, they borrowed a little bit of money, then borrowed a little bit more, and then borrowed a little bit more. And at the end, it was very difficult to pay it back. So what we were able to do for this particular, literally 3 generations of a family living and running this farm was to reorganize their debt, renegotiate with their secured creditors, and get them into a budget where they have a repayment plan and they were able to keep the farm as long as they made those reduced payments. So, that's an extreme example of what comes to mind, but, just something that we do here all the time that kind of goes unnoticed is for young families, right? You've got a couple that has a little bit of debt each. They get together. Now they have a little bit more debt. Then they decide they want to have a child or two. And now all of a sudden the expenses go through the roof with daycare and groceries and diapers, and they just can't keep up. And, the great thing is, guys like you and I are helping, 10 or 20 of these people a month in that kind of situation. So it's just wonderful.
Well, and the other thing there is that having that debt puts a lot of pressure on a young marriage, and I see a lot of people that are near the brink of divorce, because of debt and their arguments about money and things like that. And so many times filing bankruptcy and discharging the debt gives them that relief that they need so that they can focus on their marriage. And it takes that one thing off their plate and lets them focus on being together and loving each other again and not fighting about money. And I honestly think that we save a lot of marriages sometimes by helping them file bankruptcy. You agree?
I absolutely agree, Don. I don't know your personal history, but at points in my life, I have struggled financially since I was married, young and 2 kids in my mid-20s. And it's really stressful when you come home at night after you both work a hard day, and then somebody or both of you have to sit down and pay the bills. And when there's no money, it just leads to irritation and aggravation. And, all of a sudden the dinner that you prepared is not good enough, or you're talking too loudly on your cell phone, or just those little things are compounded by the fact that you're aggravated, that you're not, that you're having these financial struggles. So it's absolutely a big factor in the separation of a lot of couples.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this is something that I don't think a lot of people know about you. I would consider you to be a serial entrepreneur. What other businesses are you involved in, and how do you believe that your involvement in these other businesses and having this other business experience helps you as a bankruptcy lawyer?
Well, that's a great question, and I have some fantastic feedback on that. So, first of all, let's talk about the other businesses that I have. So I have a partnership in a restaurant and bar with a friend of mine from high school that I grew up with. He was a successful bar opener and wanted to branch into another one, and asked, I was his attorney helping him with the first bar. So he said, "Hey, do you want to do this together?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I have that bar restaurant up in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. I also have some commercial and some residential rental properties. So I have a little bit of property management going on there. And then I assist my wife with her yoga studio. And my wife's passion is to help people with cancer and chronic illness through yoga. Cancer and chemotherapy and all of those treatments that come with renal failure, they really do a lot of damage to your body and your joints. And when she got into yoga and found out that she could teach people how to relieve that stress and that pressure and those physical ailments, I knew that we had to, put together an opportunity for her to take that out into the community. So those are some of the businesses that I have. We also do during tax season, we have a little bit of a tax practice as well. But to further answer your question, what this has done in my practice is, in addition to bankruptcy, I also have a real estate law practice, and we have a small business practice. So I have a lot of experience with both personal finances and business finances, how to properly run those things, how to set them up. And, if you've ever seen any of my ads or my videos on TikTok and Instagram and those kind of things, I'm usually speaking to small business owners or consumers that are struggling from debt, because there's just so much misinformation out there. And I really want consumers and small business owners or people that are buying a home for the first time, those are the types of people we're helping. And if they would just make that phone call to get some professional advice from a local attorney before they, get in over their head and make a mistake, you can save, spending a couple $100 can save you several $1,000s.
Absolutely. I started chuckling there a little bit when you talked about seeing your advertising, because one thing that I remember seeing of yours was, like, I think your face on a dollar bill looked like a dollar bill type of thing or something like that.
I do.
That's
yes.
why I kind of chuckled a little bit.
That's so it's funny that first attorney that I told you I worked for when I was still in law school clerking, he had a dollar bill billboard that said, it was 1-800-BANKRUPT was the name that he had out, the phone number that he had out in Pittsburgh. And it was just on a regular $1 bill. So I spoke to him, and we parted ways in good company when I left that firm. But I spoke to him and I said, what do you think about, instead of that, have the dollar bill, but have me be the president in the middle? So, it was about 12 years ago that we did that, Don, and it has been on the streets of the Lehigh Valley here for the last 12 years. And somebody says something to me at least 5 days out of 7 every week.
I believe it. It's definitely memorable. That's for sure.
Well, I figured if you want to grab somebody's attention, what better way to do it than put a giant dollar bill on the side of the road,
Absolutely. So most bankruptcy lawyers, I think, really are just focused on helping their clients get the discharge. But I know you kind of look at bankruptcy a little differently. You kind of look at bankruptcy more of as, you kind of take a holistic approach to bankruptcy. What are some of the ways that you help your clients after the bankruptcy is completed to kind of go above and beyond what other attorneys do?
Yes, of course. So I absolutely look at bankruptcy as part of a holistic endeavor here. A lot of folks think that when they meet with somebody that talks about bankruptcy or advertises bankruptcy, that they're going to come in, they're going to say, I have $40,000 worth of debt. I'm going to say, okay, it costs this much, file bankruptcy. Thank you very much. See you later. And that is not what we do here. The first thing that I ask,
it's very transactional. It's very transactional for most lawyers.
Yeah, and that's not what I know. That's not what you do, and that's not the way that I handle these cases either. When somebody comes in here, we of course have to address immediately what they're looking for, but I don't ask questions of them targeted just to, hey, give me your papers, we're filing bankruptcy. I ask questions further, like, what are your goals for the next 5 years? To me, that's a really big one, because somebody comes in here because they're being sued by American Express for $12,000 or sued by Discover Card for $10,000, and they just are looking for that immediate relief. And while that is absolutely important and we can help with that, I want to teach people to look into the future. So many of the folks that I meet are living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have a lot of money in savings. And I want to fix that, right? So a bankruptcy gets rid of your debt. Great. That takes the immediate pressure off. It takes the immediate pain off. But if you don't take the next step to futurecast and plan for savings and retirement and those kind of things, a lot of people will, find themselves in a bankruptcy situation in 5, 6, 7, 8 years again. And listen, I've got 3 kids to put through college. I love repeat business, but I would rather my customers file bankruptcy with me and then come back 3 years later and buy a house and, show me that they've saved money and now they want to start a small business. So I'm always asking that question, like, so what's your 5-year plan? Or do you own a home? If you don't own a home, would you like to own a home? Do you want to talk about improving your credit score? So one of the things that we've done here, and I know that this is near and dear to your heart, because after a bankruptcy filing, we enroll every one of our clients into this amazing program called Fresh Start for Life. And Fresh Start for Life, I'll let you tell everybody what it is for those who don't know. But in my opinion, Fresh Start for Life is essentially an educational tool that I really wish schools taught people in 11th or 12th grade before they go out into the real world. Because with just a little bit of education about how credit and money and budgeting works, you start off in such a better position in life. And, I have to think that the reason they don't teach that in junior or senior year of high school is probably because the children aren't ready to hear it yet. But man, I wish they would. I wish they would teach it, and I wish the kids would hear it and listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Fresh Start for Life, the primary course, it's called Rebuild Your Credit, Rebuild Your Life. And it's kind of focused on teaching individuals how to rebuild their credit after they come out of their discharge, after they get their discharge. And, I always tell people, if you follow the advice and instructions we give you in this course, you should be able to get your credit score up to around 700, or above within 12 to 24 months of the discharge. And that's pretty amazing. If somebody's goal is to buy a home after a bankruptcy, most of the times within 2 years or so, about 2 years, they're going to be able to buy that house, after they get out of bankruptcy, assuming they take the steps they need to take to, get their credit rebuilt and things like that. So that aspect of it is super important. And that's a course that I charge online for $997. And you give it to all your clients absolutely free.
I do. And I do that as part of a relationship that you and I have. And I just feel like it's that important to my clients. And, a lot of folks that I meet with, Don, and I would probably say that's the same for your folks, is they've never had a credit score of 700 or 720 or 730. They've always been in the sixes or maybe even high fives.
Right.
And just that little bit of education can get you there. When I meet with people, they say, oh, well, I got to get rid of this debt, but I don't want to file bankruptcy because I'm trying to buy a house. And I say to them, listen, in order to buy a house, you have to save up a down payment. In order to save up a down payment, in order to get a good credit score, you have to have a credit score and a down payment. In order to get a good credit score, you've got to eliminate the debt. If you're paying the debt, how are you going to also save for a house? So if you are doing it your way, where you want to negotiate and pay the debts, very honorable, and that's fine. But it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to pay off the debt. Then it's going to take another 2 or 3 years for you to get your credit score back up and save up a down payment.
Right.
If you file bankruptcy now and then follow the steps in the Fresh Start for Life program to rebuild your credit and rebuild your life, your credit score will be where it needs to be by the time you've saved up a down payment, which, like you said, is generally between 12 to 24 months.
Absolutely. It's amazing how that works. The timing is pretty impeccable.
Yeah, it's perfect. And when I sit down and explain that to my clients and potential clients, a lot of times they're in disbelief. But one of the things that I do is I say, hey, listen, I've written a book about this. I know that you've written some books too. I actually have a couple copies here over my shoulder, but I've written some books about this. And if a lawyer is going to put something in writing and publish a book, it damn well better be true.
Absolutely right.
So that's what I tell people. I say, listen, if I wrote this in a book that I published and sell online and give out to my clients, then I'm going to be held accountable. So it's got to be true.
Absolutely. All right. Very good. I just have maybe 1 or 2 more questions for you. Actually, you mentioned that you have experience with both personal and business finance and things like that. So I would like to know from you, what is the most important piece of advice you can give a person financially? What's your best piece of financial advice you can give to somebody? And I'm not talking just about bankruptcy. I'm just talking about your life experience and your business experience in general.
So it would probably be 2 different for personal and business. Okay. So the best piece of advice I can give somebody personally from a budgeting and finance standpoint is if you have direct deposit with your employer, you need to take and earmark a certain amount of money that goes into savings automatically. So when you get your direct deposit, let's say you're being paid $1,000 a week, you want to put 100 or 150 or 200 if you can do it. If you can put $200 a week into a savings account and live off the 800 and just not spend that $200 in the savings account, it will build up quickly and it will be there for you in an emergency. And the tip there, in my opinion, there's this old method of envelopes, right?
Right.
So we all know about, who is it? Dave Ramsey,
Dave
right?
Ramsey. Yep.
Dave Ramsey's the envelope guy. So he says, you bring your money home in cash. He's an old guy. You bring your money home in cash and you put X amount of money in each different envelope. And then you can only spend the money in that envelope for the purpose that is written on the envelope.
Right.
Well, we all have virtual wallets these days, so we got to do things a little bit differently. And man, most people don't have cash at all, or they have like $5 or $10. What I tell people to do is to open a savings account at a different bank. So let's say, for example, you use Wells Fargo as your primary checking account bank for all of your stuff. Open a savings account at a small local bank, one that you have to actually like drive to get the money, if that's still a thing. Have the money direct deposited in there, because then you won't just spend it. You won't just say, I know I was supposed to save that $100 between paycheck to paycheck, but I really want to go out to get a pizza tonight or go out to a movie with my family, and then it evaporates. Right. And if it's in a different bank and it goes there automatically and you never see it, chances are you can save it. So that's the personal advice. The business advice that I have is for small business owners is two things. One, know your worth, and we'll get back to that. And number two is businesses make money. If what you're doing doesn't make money, then it's a hobby. And if it's a hobby, then you also need a job. So those things all go together. So many people that I know that run small businesses and don't do it appropriately are not charging enough money. You have to know your worth and charge your worth in order to be able to do things like have your business be incorporated and pay your taxes and hire employees and make a profit. There are so many small business owners that think that they're making money because their needs are met and most of their bills are paid, but they're not really making money. They're just doing this thing to get by in life. And that's where, meeting with an attorney and going through some of those things, having a good attorney and a good accountant as a small business owner and taking their advice when they give it to you is the way to have a successful business and to make sure that you're charging appropriately, you've got the right insurances. And having a small business, being a business owner is very difficult, but it's not impossible. There are millions of business owners in this country that are making money and living their life and designing it the way they want. So those are my two pieces of advice.
That's awesome. I love the personal finance advice. I love both, but the personal finance advice really hit home with me. And I want to add just one little thing to what you said, and that's on that separate account at that separate bank. Don't get a debit card for that account.
Yeah.
And if you do get one, don't put it in your wallet for sure. But if you have a debit card, it's so easy just to go ahead and say, well, I'm going to swipe it out of this account, when you have that temptation. So don't get a debit card for that account.
Yeah, I think it should be a savings account. Frankly, it shouldn't even be a checking account. Have it be a savings account. And if you go to, I remember back to the days when I was like 14 years old. I got my first job at McDonald's, and I had a savings account at I think it was called Franklin Savings and Loan. And I had this little passbook. Do you remember the passbook?
I do. I absolutely do.
You would go to the bank and you would give them your book, and they would run it through the machine and stamp like you added in your paycheck of $100. And you would get your book, and you didn't have anything to show for it other than that book that said, I have $385. And that's the kind of account that I was referring to. You want something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Now we still don't have anything to show for it except we have an app. We got to look at an app,
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is awesome, Charles. It was really great. I'm glad we had this chance to talk and to, tell our audiences a little bit more about you and who you are and where you come from and, where your heart's at when it comes to helping consumers.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Don. I know that we get to hang out together a few times a year at various business-related conferences, and I always appreciate hanging out with you and getting to know you, and I'm glad that we could finally sit down and record something to share with our clients and our followers on social media so that they can get to know us too.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Charles.
You're welcome. Bye, Don.
Bye.